Hello everybody and welcome to Nanny Tumble's Storytime Challenge. Today we're going to read about a young boy called Vince, and the title of the story is Vince, Guilty for Doing the Right Thing or Complicit. Let's begin. This is as tall a tale as you will ever hear. Vincent OConnell, let's call him Vince, just like his friends do, is 10 years old and in year 5 at school. He has an elder brother and sister, both of whom went to his school, but who are now at secondary school. Neither of them had a very good reputation, and each September, as Vince entered a new year, the teachers would say, another OConnell. They always used a sarcastic tone, and Vince knew he had to keep his head down if he was to survive being accused of being a culprit of every misdemeanor. Vince also had a younger sister in year 3. Her name is Annabelle. Let's call her Annie, just like her friends do. At 11 a.m. exactly, years 5 and 6 were sitting on their hunkers at an emergency assembly. Not one of them dared whisper, snigger, or fidget. The headmaster, Mr. McIntyre, had the expression of someone you would not want to meet in the dark, dangerous and frightening pirate tunnel train ride at the summer fair. He stood ramrod straight and as still as an African tiger, ready to pounce on its prey. Vince had the most dreadful feeling that years 5 and 6 were that very prey. The children could feel the angry tension in the hall, swooshing around like a menacing wind beckoning a tornado. Some of the children were brave enough to sneak glances at each other, but were very swiftly admonished as Mr. McIntyre's authoritative tone rang across the hall. You! Yes, you, Chambers! And you, Whittle! Up here now and face the whiteboard. You might guess that Mr. McIntyre is Scottish. Vince's eyes caught Miss Ash, their teacher, and lingered there for a moment in the hope of a reassuring smile. But there was no comfort in the face of Miss Ash. She looked the sternest Vince had ever seen her, her mouth set in an ugly grimace, as if she had just sucked on the sourest of lemons. Trouble was brewing. It was in the air, and the children started to straighten their backs with tension as a wave of unusual and uneasy apprehension rippled through them. It seemed like an eternity, but it was merely a few seconds before Mr. McIntyre began. I am very sad to report that we have a pilferer in the midst of our little platoon here. What's a pilferer then? Hands up if you know. Vince and others put up their hands. Young OConnell, stand up and let's hear it then. From his shirt collar upwards, Vince's skin flushed the colour of tomato sauce, and his legs trembled. Vince stuttered. The thief, sir, or a robber. Vince always stuttered when he was nervous, but no one teased him about it, and his mum said it would go away as he grew older. Vince kept his fingers crossed. Aye, indeed, O'Connell. Back on your hunkers now. Mr. McIntyre picked up a piece of paper from the table at his side and began to read, his tone harsh and his voice deliberate. Tuesday, 11 October, 4 p.m. Mr. Ansell, art teacher, reports missing art paper, colouring pens and paint palette tins. Wednesday, 12th October, 2 p.m. Mrs. White, dinner lady, reports 10 missing water bottles, 8 bananas and 4 apples. She further reported that the fridge where the leftover ham and cheese packed lunch sandwiches were stored had been raided, leaving not a crumb in sight. Thursday, 13 October, 8:30 a.m. Miss Ash, Year 5 teacher, and Mr. Rudall, Year 6 teacher, report noticing an unusual sense of mystery, excitement, and hushed whispers across Years 5 and 6, almost as if a plot was afoot. Once again, silence reigned. Suddenly, Mr. McIntyre shook the piece of paper furiously, as if wielding an old-fashioned cane, and bellowed. The perpetrators have until the end of school tomorrow to come clean. There will be consequences if no one comes forward, and consequences in any event for the culprit or culprits. That will be all. Line up in an orderly fashion and back to your classes. Silently! At 2 p.m. exactly, one of the school secretaries, Miss Fulbright, came to Vince's class and informed Miss Ash that Vince was to join the headmaster in his office. Miss Ash nodded and said, "Off you go, Vincent." The rest of the class stared, gobsmacked, as Vince trundled off behind Miss Fulbright with his head down. Some of the children's lips trembled as they tried to control the cheers from not dropping. Others sought each other out with furtive eye contact, all nervously fiddling with pencils, papers and sharpeners, whatever they could get their hands on. As sure a sign of anxiety, if ever there was a sign. "Sit down, laddie, and I want you to look me in the eye." Vince clumsily sat on the chair opposite Mr. McIntyre, trying his best to keep his head high. "Now, O'Connell, I want you to know that just because you're brother and sister, well, always in trouble, it doesn't mean I think you are trouble. But I was hoping you might know something about this pilfering." Vince lowered his head, his brain scrambling for ideas as to how to get out of this, and quickly. He knew if he lied, his tomato sauce flush would raise his temperature and he would sweat. But he was no snitch, and he just couldn't give his friends up. Oh, cripes! Vince felt like a mouse trapped in the corner with the cheese clenched between his teeth, whilst the cat sat licking its paws, while its green eyes seared through the mouse's very being. Panic took over Vince's body, and he started to rock gently on the chair, his right foot tapping and tapping against the floor. He just had to lie. There was no other way around it. He just couldn't snitch. He just couldn't. Take your time now, laddie, and think very carefully about what you are about to say to me. Mr. McIntyre's words had given Vince a moment to collect himself, and the words just burst out. Sorry, sir, I don't know anything. Aye, well, judging by the colour of your face, young O'Connell, I'm pretty sure you've got more to say, but I'll leave it for now. Back to your class now, and maybe have a wee chat with your chums, aye? I think you're sensible enough to know what we need to get to the bottom of this. Vince felt relief flood through his body, but he knew it would be temporary. The guilt was giving him the worst tummy ache he had ever had. That evening, Vince and Annie were in the living room doing their homework. Mum was upstairs folding the laundry, and all the others were out. As they were alone, Annie spoke up. Vince, it's all round the school. Everyone is talking about somebody stealing things from school. You're not involved, are you? James told me that he had seen you in Mr. McIntyre's office this afternoon. You know we shouldn't steal. Mum has always been straight about that. You don't take what doesn't belong to you. Vince's eyes misted over, and the geometry question on the page in front of him became a blur. As much as he felt miserable, the worry was more powerful, pervading his every moment. But he just didn't know what to do. Annie loved her brother so much. He was her hero, and she always looked up to him. Vince, she said, gently but tentatively, tell me what's wrong. I can see you're upset. Vince's shoulders started to heave, and the tears began to flow. I just don't know what to do, Annie. We were only helping Eloisa. She's always hungry. She only ever has a couple of stale-looking digestive biscuits in her lunchbox. Her clothes are always dirty. She's got holes in her tights. She always cries at PE because her gym shoes are too tight. She's also the most gifted artist. We all love her drawings, but she hasn't got anything at home to draw with, and she says her dad just can't afford things. Annie was surprised by Vince's outpourings, but took a moment before saying, But by stealing from school, couldn't you have found another way to help her? By sharing some of your things, or asking the teachers for help? I know, said Vince, but we didn't think anyone would notice. Tim from year 6 managed to get into the kitchen fridge, and Sammy and me snuck into the art room. And I lied to Mr. McIntyre. I'm in such trouble, I just know it. Mum will be livid if she finds out. At just that moment, Mum entered the room. Just what will I be livid about then? Annie looked at Vince and nodded, head down, and once only, a silent request that he should tell Mum the truth. As if a dam was bursting its sides, The truth tumbled from Vince's mouth like gushing water. Mum sat silently, her mind whirling. She knew she would have to handle this as delicately as possible. It was clear that Vince was beside himself with fear and in a right state. But he had done the right thing by owning up, and she needed to help him find the best solution. "Okay," Mum said. "First, hot chocolate, and then we'll work out what to do." For the second time that day, relief flooded through Vince. But this time it was good, honest relief, not the relief he felt after getting away with lying to Mr. McIntyre. Vince, Annie and Mum supped on their hot chocolate, and Vince told Mum everything again from the beginning. Mum tempered her advice with lots of sprinklings of always staying true to the life values that Mum taught and the school reinforced every day at school. Those main values were about respect and honesty. As Mum spoke, Vince and Annie nodded along. "Okay, so here's what we're going to do," said Mum. "Vince, tomorrow morning you need to speak with Tim and Sammy. You need to let them know that you lied to Mr. McIntyre, and you need to let them know that you are going to take the blame and tell him the truth. To be honest, I'm rather hoping Tim and Sammy will do the right thing and not let you take the blame alone. If they are the decent boys I think they are, then they are probably feeling just as worried as you and would rather own up with you. Then, at lunchtime, I will phone Mr. McIntyre to explain. That's if he hasn't already phoned me by then." Vince went to bed that night feeling much better, but still slightly nervous. What would Tim and Sammy say? The next morning, as everyone fooled around waiting for the school gate to open, Vince grabbed Tim and Sammy to the side and told them what had happened yesterday with Mr. McIntyre and what his mum had said. Both Tim and Sammy were hesitant. Then Tim said, "To be honest, I've been so on edge since that assembly. I didn't even eat my dinner last night, I was so worried. I'm sure Dad noticed something's up." Sammy too expressed his concern. "Me too. I know we were just trying to help, Eloisa, but we did the wrong thing and will surely get in big trouble. The worst thing is going to be my mum finding out. She'll go ballistic." Vince couldn't help himself high-fiving his friends. "Come on, guys, we've got to do the right thing, and whatever the consequences, we'll face them together. And don't worry about your mum, Sammy. My mum will speak to her if you like." As the school gates swung open, the trio made their way down the path to the headmaster's office. Mr. McIntyre was sitting at his table working on his computer. And as Vince gave a tentative knock on the door, Mr. McIntyre looked up, and his glasses slid to his nose. But, as usual, he habitually nudged them back into place. "Ah," he said. "Good morning, laddies. Come in and take a seat." As the boys sat around the table, Mr. McIntyre joined them and sat with his hands clasped on the table. He was clearly expectant of what they had to say and gave them a moment before saying, So what is it you wanted to see me about? Vince took the lead and spoke first. Well, sir, it's about the pilfering. Go on, said McIntyre. It was us, sir. Aye, and are you going to tell me why? Tim piped up and launched into the story about how they had all been worried about Eloisa and had been trying to help her. Oh, laddies, don't you think me and the teachers know when one of you needs some support? We're already making sure Eloisa's family get the help they need, just like we do with any of the children at school. Why didn't you talk to one of the adults or come to me? I know I call years 5 and 6 my little platoon, as if I was still in the army, and I can be stern and firm, but I'm always fair. I knew, O'Connell, that you weren't honest with me yesterday, but I was hoping a good night's sleep would bring you to your senses. And, well, here you are. The boys looked to one another as they shared reassuring half-smiles. They weren't out of the deep water yet. Oh, laddies, I can't tell you how respectful I am of you for telling the truth. But much as it pains me, because clearly a number of your classmates are also complicit, I have to dish out sanctions. And if you're the laddies I think you are, then you will accept these sanctions gracefully. So, for the next fortnight, no morning break. Maths and spelling revision instead. At lunch break, you, Tim, will help Mr. Rudel tidy the class, and Vince and Sammy will help Miss Ash. Are we good? Yes, sir, the trio chimed in unison. Right then, off to class with you. Your teachers will be wondering where you are. And the moral of this story: even if doing a bad thing can have a good outcome, don't jump in. Think your very best how to find a better, risk and dishonest free solution. The end. I hope you enjoyed that story. I loved hearing about Vince. But a couple of things bothered me. When Mr. McIntyre mentioned to Vince in his office about knowing that his brother and sister had always been in trouble, and that the teachers sometimes spoke about a reputation, is that fair? Do you think it's fair because if one of your brothers or sisters tends to get into trouble a lot, then you're really sort of tainted with the same brush? And that's not fair, because in all families, everybody's different. Everybody. And it's not fair to assume that because one child does something bad, that all the children in that family will also do bad things. Next question. Did the boys do the right thing? It's obvious that years 5 and 6, that many of them had got together and talked about how they could help Eloisa. But maybe they need some strategy skills so that they worked through, just like you would do with any problem at school, in maths, in science. What's the best answer? And don't forget, you don't break the rules. Not if you can help it. Okay, guys, I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.